The dog who barked at the wall and exposed a nightmare. There are moments when a single sound changes everything. It wasn't a gunshot. It wasn't a scream. It was the bark of a German shepherd sharp, insistent, and directed at a concrete wall in a forgotten warehouse. Most officers would have moved on, but not Sergeant Cole, and certainly not Bran, his canine partner, trained for danger, not denial. What they discovered wasn't just a missing girl. It was a secret buried beneath chains, silence, and betrayal from within their own department. And when that girl whispered, "One of them wears your badge," it became clear this wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a war against a system built to stay silent. This is the true haunting journey of a dog who refused to stop barking, a woman who chose truth over orders, and the unit they built when the rest of the world turned away. Stay with us, because the deeper you go, the more you'll understand. Some walls are meant to be broken. Detroit had a sound to it. Even in the silence, even in the hours past midnight when the city seemed to hold its breath, there was still that hum, the low, aching murmur of a place trying to remember what it used to be. Cole Ramsey stood beside his cruiser, boots planted on crumbling pavement, a beam of moonlight slicing between gutted steel skeletons of forgotten factories. The air smelled like wet metal and time. To his side, Bran, his canine partner of 6 years, stood frozen, head cocked, ears twitching like satellite dishes trying to pick up a frequency only dogs could hear. Cole glanced down. "You good, boy?" Bran didn't answer, not with sound. But the slow tension in his body, shoulders tightening, hackles rising, said more than words. Then the dog moved. A single step, then another. Nose to the wind, then to the ground. His breath quickened as he began to tug at the leash. "Bran?" Cole straightened, suddenly alert. "What's going on?" They'd patrolled this sector dozens of times. Building 32B was just another slab of graffiti-covered concrete in a graveyard of industry. The old Ford textile plant had burned twice, collapsed once, and was condemned for good measure. There shouldn't have been anything left worth sniffing. But Bran disagreed. With a low growl in his throat, he pulled Cole toward a wall blank, unmarked, not even tagged by local kids anymore. It was just there, forgotten, still. Bran lunged. "Hey, Bran! Whoa!" Cole tightened the leash, but the dog was insistent now, clawing at the wall with both front paws, digging nails into concrete like it was hiding something. He barked a short, urgent sound, then another, the kind of bark Bran only used when it mattered. Cole crouched beside him, flashlight beam steady as he swept it across the surface. No entryways, no damage, but then something. A faint line vertical running like a seam just beneath the paint. Too perfect to be natural. A wall patched over? Bran backed up, eyes fixed on it, then charged again, claws skittering, scraping. His front paw bled slightly from the effort, but he didn't seem to care. Cole placed a hand on the dog's side, gently pressing him back. "Okay, Bran. I hear you." He reached for his radio. "Unit 4-1 requesting backup. Possible code 13, abandoned sector 7. Something's not sitting right here." There was static, then a bored voice. "Copy that. You want me to call Vega?" Cole paused. Leona Vega wasn't just his commanding officer. She was ex-FBI, smarter than anyone he'd ever worked with, and not easily rattled. But if Bran was reacting like this... "Yeah," he said. "Wake her up." He clicked the radio off, turned back toward the wall. Bran sat beside him now, silent but alert. The kind of stillness that made you feel like the air itself was holding its breath. "Whatever it is," Cole muttered, "we're not walking away tonight, huh?" Bran looked up at him, eyes sharp and dark, then placed one paw gently against Cole's boot. A simple gesture, but it felt like an anchor in a sea of things Cole didn't yet understand. Far above them, broken glass windows trembled slightly in the night breeze. Somewhere in the city, a train howled like a distant memory. Cole stayed where he was, one hand resting on Bran's fur, the other on his holstered sidearm, waiting for backup, for answers, for whatever it was that had been hiding behind that wall, waiting too. The tires crunched to a stop on broken gravel, and the low hum of the engine cut off like a breath held too long. Leona Vega stepped out, boots first, coat flaring behind her like a dark flag in the wind. Cole didn't turn. He didn't have to. She was already scanning the surroundings, eyes sharp, taking in the warehouse's collapsed roof lines, the faded "no trespassing" signs, the silence too clean to be real. Detroit was full of ruins that pretended to be empty. Leona knew better. "What do we have?" she asked quietly. Cole pointed to the wall. "He won't stop." Bran was back at it, pawing, scratching, body trembling not with fear, but with insistence. His breathing came in tight, shallow bursts. Every muscle in him said one thing: now. Leona crouched beside the dog, holding a gloved hand a few inches from the wall. Cold, slightly damp. But more than that, something else. She pressed her fingers flat. "You feel that?" Cole stepped closer. "The seam?" She nodded. "It's not structural. Look, Grout's different. This panel was patched over." Bran let out a low whine and circled. His nose went to the base of the wall, pressing into a crack only he could smell. When he growled again, it wasn't a threat. It was grief. "What's back there?" Cole whispered. Leona didn't answer. Instead, she stood, pulling a multi-tool from her coat. "Get the rescue axe from the unit. We're opening this now." Cole hesitated only a second before jogging back to the cruiser. Bran didn't move. He pressed his side to Leona's leg like a sentry. Minutes later, the first hit rang out. Steel against concrete, then another. Cole struck low, near the seam, dust exploding with every impact. Bran barked once sharp, then stepped back. The third blow cracked something deeper. Leona knelt and peeled off a loose chunk. "There's a gap." She reached inside, feeling cold metal and darkness. The space behind the wall inhaled her touch. Cole adjusted his grip. One more. This time, the wall gave in. A slab collapsed inward, revealing a hollowed-out space, maybe 3 feet wide, a service tunnel, long sealed. Dust billowed like breath from a dying mouth. But it wasn't the air that stopped them. It was the sound, faint, fragile. A rustle, a cough. No, not even that. It was the sound of a life too weak to speak for itself. Bran moved first. Without waiting for command, he slipped through the opening, nose low, tail rigid. Cole called his name, but the dog didn't respond. Flashlights on, weapons unholstered. Leona ducked inside first, Cole right behind her. The tunnel curved slightly, every step echoing. Walls were lined with broken pipes and long-dead wires. It smelled like mold and something older, like silence had been rotting here. Then the beam of light found her. A girl, no, a young woman chained at the ankle, slumped against rusted metal beams. Her skin was pale, lips cracked. Clothes hung loose like they'd stopped fitting days ago. Her wrists were rubbed raw. A metal bowl lay empty beside her. She didn't flinch. She just looked at them like someone who had seen too many faces come and go. "Oh my God," Leona breathed. Bran was already at her side. He didn't bark. He just nudged her gently, pressing his head under her limp hand until her fingers curled faintly against his fur. Cole moved quickly, assessing the cuffs. "We need cutters. Now." Leona dropped to her knees beside the girl. "Hey, hey, can you hear me?" The young woman blinked. Her voice was barely audible. "They said no one would come." Her lips trembled, not from fear, from disbelief. Leona pressed a bottle of water to her mouth. "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're not alone anymore." The girl drank in small, shaking sips. Her voice rasped as she whispered, "They come back every night, and one of them—" She turned, eyes locking onto Leona's badge with something between horror and hope. "One of them wears that." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. Cole froze mid-motion. Leona felt her stomach drop like a trap door had opened beneath them. Bran whined again, and this time it sounded like a plea. Leona didn't speak. She just reached for her radio and turned it off. Something had been hiding here, and they had just stepped into its shadow. The tunnel didn't echo anymore, not with footsteps, not with voices, just breath shallow, uneven, and the faint, almost sacred sound of water being sipped by lips that had nearly forgotten how. Elise's hands trembled as she held the bottle. Her fingers were skeletal, skin pale like frost under a streetlight. But her eyes, those didn't shake. They were wide and still and so terribly awake. Haunted, yes, but not empty. No, they held something else. Something no one in that tunnel was ready for. Leona crouched beside her, one hand steadying the girl's arm as Cole worked on cutting the chain from her ankle. Bran sat close, his side pressed lightly against Elise's thigh. His tail didn't move. His body was still. Like he understood this wasn't just a rescue, it was a reckoning. Cole grunted as the bolt cutter bit into rusted iron. "This thing's been here a while." Leona didn't respond. Her attention was on the girl. "You said they come back every night." Elise gave a slight nod. Her mouth opened, then closed again, like forming words physically hurt. She leaned her head back against the pipe behind her. Her voice was thin, barely there. "They bring others sometimes, not to stay, just to show." "To show what?" Leona's tone stayed soft, like talking to a child. But her hand crept toward her holster. Elise turned her head, slowly, deliberately. She looked straight at Leona's badge and whispered, "One of them wears that." The sentence lingered in the cold air like fog that wouldn't lift. For a beat, no one moved. Leona blinked. "What did you say?" But Elise wasn't looking at her anymore. Her body folded forward slightly, like the truth had taken something out of her. "He told me no one would come, because no one would dare, not when he's still on the inside." Cole had stopped moving. The bolt cutter now hung useless in his hand. Leona's blood ran cold, not because Elise had said it, because Elise had believed it. Bran whined low, almost inaudible. His eyes flicked between the girl and Leona, then the tunnel behind them. Something in his posture shifted. His ears pulled back slightly. "Hey." Leona reached forward, cupping Elise's cheek. The girl flinched, but didn't pull away. "Look at me." It took a second, but she did. And that's when Leona saw it. the clarity, the pain, the memory that wouldn't die. Elise's voice cracked on the next words. He had a patch on his arm, like yours, but different. Golden eagle. And he called the others by numbers. Cole looked up sharply. Numbers? 14, 27, 8. Her breath hitched. They laughed while they watched me scream. No one spoke. Somewhere far above, the city exhaled, an engine roaring down a highway, a horn blaring, life pretending it wasn't built on bones. Leona stood slowly. We need to get her out. Now! Cole nodded, voice tight. I can carry her. No! Elise's hand grabbed Leona's sleeve, weak but locked. They're watching the exits, not just here. Everywhere. Leona knelt again. Who's watching? The girl's lips parted, but no sound came. Just a breath. Then she whispered, They're not all strangers. One of them called me by my middle name. No one knew that. Bran let out a short, sharp bark, then turned, facing the tunnel entrance, his hackles raised. Someone's coming, Cole said. He hears it. Leona pulled her weapon, but it was only backup, a rookie unit. Too young, too late. They radioed it in, but Leona didn't hear what they said. Her mind was stuck on the words, Golden Eagle, middle name, numbers, badges. This wasn't just some trafficking cell. It was systemic. Inside, rotted to the core. She looked back one more time at Elise, now barely conscious, curled into Bran's warmth. His body curled protectively around her, like she was already pack. Whatever's behind this, Leona said quietly. They didn't plan on her surviving. Cole met her eyes. They sure as hell didn't plan on her being found by a dog. The wall had cracked. Now came the avalanche. The hallway outside room 417 smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. A janitor's cart creaked somewhere down the corridor. The hospital was quiet, in that strange artificial way where silence didn't feel like peace, but more like things waiting to be said. Inside the room, Elise lay propped against two thin pillows, skin still too pale under the washed-out fluorescent light. Her left arm was wrapped in gauze from wrist to elbow. An IV line ran quietly into the crook of her right one. Her lips, once dry and cracked, were now only slightly trembling with each breath. But it was her eyes that had changed. They weren't drifting anymore. They were watching. Leona Vega sat across from her, coat still damp from the night before, notepad unopened on her lap. She wasn't here to interrogate. Not yet. Bran was lying at the foot of the bed, eyes half-lidded but ears twitching every time a nurse walked by the door. His presence had calmed Elise more than any sedative. Cole stood in the corner, arms crossed. He hadn't said much since they got here. Neither had Leona. They were waiting for her. Elise took a slow breath, swallowed hard. How long was I gone? Leona met her gaze. You've been missing for 13 days. Something behind Elise's expression flickered. Felt longer. They fed you sedatives, Cole said softly. You're detoxing now. That's why your memory's still hazy. Elise nodded. She looked down at her lap for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier than they expected. I worked for Arcos Corporation, Midtown office. I was hired in finance about 9 months ago. Leona leaned in slightly. As an analyst? Technically, but mostly I just cleaned up their paper trails. Hundreds of shell companies. Offshore transfers, all neat, all buried. Cole glanced at Leona. This wasn't new, but the way Elise said it, it wasn't just discovery. It was betrayal. I wasn't stupid, she continued. They were laundering large sums, some of it through crypto, some through real estate deals that didn't exist, but that wasn't the part that scared me. She looked up now, meeting Leona's eyes dead on. It was the names. What names? Leona asked, voice quiet. Law enforcement, military, officials tied to Homeland, even federal judges. They weren't just protecting Arcos, they were Arcos, part of it. Paid by it? Some of them I'd seen before, on TV, at briefings. And you reported it? Cole asked. Elise nodded. I tried. I went to my manager first. She told me to drop it, said I misunderstood the structure. And you didn't buy it. I'm not that naive. She let out a breath, shaky. Remembering was like slicing through glass. I started copying files, quietly, spreadsheets, emails, offshore logs. I encrypted everything and uploaded it to a cloud vault my brother helped me build. I was going to go to a reporter, someone independent. Leona tilted her head. But they found out. I don't know how. Maybe I was sloppy. Maybe someone was watching my login. Either way, I didn't make it to the meeting. I remember stepping off the curb and then her voice trailed off. She blinked once, slowly. A black van, no windows, gloved hands, cold floor, chains. Bran stirred, let out a quiet growl, not at her, but for her. I woke up in that tunnel 2 days later. No light, no name, just numbers. They fed me just enough to keep me alive. Sometimes I'd hear them talking above. Not all of them spoke English, but the one who gave the orders. Elise's face went still. He was American. Military voice, authoritative, used the phrase eagle tier once, and he wore something on his chest. Gold eagle insignia. Leona's fingers curled in her lap. Cole's voice was low. Do you know his name? No, Elise whispered. But he knew mine, my middle name, my high school. He told me I wouldn't be missed for long, that even if I escaped, I'd have no one to trust. She looked down again, and I almost believed him, until the dog came. Bran let out a soft huff. Elise smiled faintly, just a flicker. He didn't stop barking, not even when his paws bled. There was a long pause in the room. No one spoke, because they all knew. This wasn't just a girl with documents. It was a witness with proof, and a system already sharpening its claws. Leona stood. Her voice was low and deliberate. Do you still have access to that cloud vault? Elise nodded. I memorized the decryption keys. I can guide you. Cole moved to the door. I'll get a secured laptop from the cruiser. Leona looked down at Bran, then back to Elise. Whatever you saw, whatever they tried to bury, we're going to dig it up. Elise met her gaze one more time, and this time her voice didn't shake at all. I hope you're ready to burn for it. The precinct didn't feel like home anymore. It should have. Cole Ramsey had spent 9 years walking these halls. Same cracked tiles in the locker room. Same overworked coffee maker with the burn ring around its base. Same bulletin board, still pinned with flyers for a retirement barbecue that had been canceled last month. But today everything felt wrong, too quiet, too polite. Leona Vega noticed it first, the way conversations paused just slightly when they entered. The way officers who used to nod at Cole suddenly kept their eyes on their screens. Someone offered a tight-lipped "ma'am," but didn't look up when he said it. Cole caught it too. He didn't say anything, just clenched his jaw and kept walking. They reached the Internal Affairs office on the 3rd floor, where Captain Burns, tall, silver-templed, and usually 3 coffees deep by 9 a.m., was waiting. His expression was unreadable, his hands folded neatly on his desk. "You said it was urgent," he said flatly. Leona placed the sealed USB on his desk. "It is." Burns looked at the drive like it had teeth. Cole spoke. This came directly from a whistleblower inside Arcos Corporation. Her name's Elise Moran. She was taken, kept in an off-grid location for nearly 2 weeks. We found her chained behind a false wall. She wasn't supposed to survive. Burns raised one brow. "And where is this Elise now?" "Under medical observation, guarded," Leona answered. "Guarded by whom?" "Us," Cole said simply. That was the first moment Burns's eyes flickered, almost imperceptibly. Leona leaned forward. "The files include names, wire transfers, operations masked as humanitarian logistics, and a recurring code, AGDP targets, Phase 2. One of those targets was a missing FBI informant from 2020. Cole added, "Another was a judge who ruled against an Arcos acquisition last year. He died 2 months later, officially a heart attack. Unofficially, it looks like a hit job." Burns didn't touch the USB. He just sighed. "You two realize what you're accusing, right? A multi-billion-dollar corporation, a network of federal contacts. You're asking me to open a full-scale investigation based on a statement from a traumatized civilian and a flash drive." "She's not just traumatized," Leona replied. "She's credible. She knew names, phrases, procedural details not available to the public. She even if that's true," Burns interrupted, "you went off book. You entered an unauthorized structure. You breached private property. You engaged in a potentially dangerous extraction without calling it in." Cole stared. "We followed Brand's lead. He's certified. His alert justified our entry." "This isn't about your dog," Burns snapped. "It's about protocol, chain of command. You broke it." Leona narrowed her eyes. "Or maybe someone's nervous we didn't ask for permission first." A beat of silence. Then Burns stood, walked to the door, opened it. 2 officers were waiting outside. One held an envelope. The other held nothing, but didn't need to. "Detective Vega, Officer Ramsey. As of this moment, you're both on administrative suspension pending an internal review. Badge and firearm, please." The word struck colder than handcuffs. Cole laughed, but it was hollow. That was fast. Leona didn't move. "Who called them?" Burns said nothing. She placed her badge on the desk with a softness that felt louder than shouting. Her sidearm followed. Cole did the same, jaw locked tight. As they turned to leave, Leona looked back once. "This came from inside, didn't it?" Still no answer. But he didn't deny it either. Outside, the sun had risen just enough to throw long, slanted shadows across the precinct steps. Leona and Cole stood at the curb, still in their uniforms but somehow already outsiders. The cruiser they had driven was no longer theirs. The keys were taken. So they walked. 1 block, then another, until the building was out of sight. They didn't speak for a long time. Bran padded silently beside them, ears alert, sensing the tension, but staying close. Finally, Cole broke the silence. He never even looked at the drive. Leona didn't look up. No, He didn't. That USB might have been the most important piece of evidence this department has seen in years, and he left it on the desk like a dirty napkin. She stopped, faced him. This isn't about evidence, Cole. It's about who that evidence points to. If Arcos has someone on the inside, and they do, they were warned the second we entered that room. Cole exhaled sharply. Then we've got nothing. No, Leona said quietly. We've got everything, just not the backing to use it. Bran stopped beside them. He looked up, then turned his head eyes locked on a passing black sedan with no plates, driving slower than it should have. Leona followed his gaze. Her voice dropped. And we've got eyes on us already. Cole's expression hardened. They took our guns, he said. Leona nodded. But they didn't take what matters. He looked at her. What's that? She looked down at Bran, then back up at Cole. The instinct to do what's right, even when no one else will. The rain began just after sundown. Not the kind that whispered on rooftops or danced politely against windows. This was heavier, an unforgiving downpour that smothered the city in a blanket of noise, like nature itself was drowning out the silence left behind by betrayal. Inside Cole's apartment, the light was dim. One single lamp in the corner cast a golden glow over the small living room, coloring everything in amber and shadow. The walls bore the kind of wear that said more about exhaustion than neglect scratches from Bran's nails, a bulletin board pinned with old case files. One photo slightly crooked of Cole and Bran standing beside a seized weapons cache. Back when everything had rules, back when they still believed in following them. Bran sat by the door, unmoving, his head tilted just enough to listen to what was outside. He hadn't relaxed since they got back. Neither had anyone else. Leona stood by the window, arms crossed over her chest, watching raindrops race down the glass like gravity was in a hurry. She didn't speak. Not yet. On the couch, Elise was curled under a fleece blanket that barely clung to warmth. Her hands were steadier now, though the IV bruises still colored her skin like old ink. She had a spiral notebook open on her lap and a pen moving slowly across the page. Cole walked in from the kitchen, 2 mugs in his hands. Tea. Sorry, no honey, I've got some sugar that expired 6 months ago, if you're feeling adventurous. Elise smiled faintly and took one. She hadn't spoken much since they got home. Her voice still cracked when she tried. But her mind, her memory, was clearer by the hour. Leona turned slightly toward her. You sure you're up for this? Elise nodded. If I don't write it down now, I might forget parts. She tore the sheet out of the notebook and handed it to Leona. A series of alphanumeric strings, neatly written, followed by a 2-step authentication path and a location for a hidden drive. No labels, no folder names, just keys to a vault no one was supposed to find. Cole leaned over her shoulder. That's the cloud vault? Yeah, Elise whispered. It needs 2-phase login. One is the password. The other is voice recognition. Mine. Leona took the paper gently and folded it into her coat. We'll back it up. Twice. 1 copy hidden. 1 on ice. Elise didn't answer. She just leaned back, her eyes drifting toward Bran. The dog hadn't moved an inch. He sat in the same position he had when they walked in, facing the door, body quiet, but alert in a way that didn't fade. He hasn't rested, she said softly. Cole nodded. He's waiting. For what? Anyone who might have followed us. The words landed heavy. The air grew still. Leona walked to the coat rack and took off her jacket, hanging it carefully. She turned back to Elise, her voice low. "They'll come looking. Maybe not tonight, but soon." Elise's hands clutched the mug tighter. "Do you think they know I'm alive?" "They know someone found something," Leona said. "They'll assume it's you eventually." Outside, thunder rolled low over the city like something massive shifting beneath the clouds. Leona moved back to the window. "You know," she said quietly, "when I was at the bureau, I used to think there were good men at the top. That for every crooked one, there were two more willing to fight for the right thing. That's what we were trained to believe." Cole looked at her. "What changed?" Leona's lips tightened. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes stayed on the street below. Then she said, "Nothing changed. I just stopped lying to myself." Bran suddenly stood. No sound. No knock. But something outside caught him. He moved closer to the door, nose twitching, body rigid. Cole walked over, gun not drawn, but his hand rested near the drawer that held it. They waited. A car passed by. A garbage truck turned the corner. Then stillness. Bran lowered his head. False alarm. But no one relaxed. Leona looked at Cole, then at Elise, then at the wall across from them, covered in shadows and old pins from old cases that no longer mattered. She said it softly, but it cut through the room like a blade. "We're not reporting this." Cole didn't blink. "I figured. We're not handing it over. Not to Burns, not to Internal Affairs, not to anyone we can't vet ourselves." Elise swallowed hard. "Then, what are we doing?" Leona turned toward her. "We're fighting it." For a long time, no one spoke. The rain poured harder. Bran, satisfied for now, returned to his post at the door and lay down, ears still flicking, watching, guarding. Cole reached up and turned off the lamp. In the darkness, they weren't officers anymore. They were survivors of a system that had abandoned them and protectors of the one thing it had tried to erase: truth. And they weren't letting go of it. Not tonight. The rain had stopped. Not that anyone inside Cole's apartment noticed. The outside world had shrunk to whispers, the occasional creak of floorboards, the hum of a laptop booting up, and the distant churn of sirens that always sounded just a little too close in this part of the city. The room was dimly lit again, the curtains drawn. Bran sat in the far corner, eyes fixed on the front door like it owed him an explanation. He hadn't made a sound since they returned from the hospital, but his presence filled the space like static, waiting for a spark. Elise sat at the small kitchen table, sleeves pulled over her hands, posture tighter than before. Across from her, Leona leaned over the laptop, her expression locked into a kind of stillness that only came with dread disguised as focus. Cole hovered behind them both, arms folded, jaw flexing every few seconds. He wasn't impatient. He was preparing for what they might not be ready to see. "Okay," Elise whispered, her voice steadier now. "We're in." The folder opened. The first layer was simple, 9 subfolders, each labeled by month. Each month had encrypted zips. Each zip had aliases as names, some fake, some real. The second layer was not so simple. A spreadsheet blinked open. Leona's eyes narrowed. "What the hell?" Offshore wire transfers. Every line was time-stamped, cross-referenced. Different currencies. Cayman, Zurich, Liechtenstein. Arcos was a name buried deep, never labeled directly. But the shell companies it used? They were there, and Elise had tied them all together. Cole stepped closer. "Wait. Go back. That 1 Thera Holdings, That was in the news last year. Major real estate acquisition in D.C. under investigation. Dropped within 48 hours, Leona murmured. Now I know why. Elise clicked into another tab. A PDF opened. This one was different. No transactions, no financials, just a list. One column, one title. AGDP targets, Phase 2. Leona exhaled slowly. This wasn't about money. Not just. Cole leaned forward, reading aloud. Randy Yellen, former Department of Energy, disappeared 2021. Maria Solis, immigration judge, found dead in her home labeled suicide. James Halbrook. He stopped. Leona looked at him. What? James Halbrook was an FBI informant. Organized crime, black market trafficking. He vanished during protective custody 3 years ago. Elise nodded. He was the first name I flagged. I didn't know who he was, just that he was listed under AGDP Tier 1, but when I Googled him, everything had been scrubbed, like he never existed. Leona's voice came quieter now. They're eliminating obstacles. One by one, Elise said. Any figure with influence who pushed back against Arcos expansion. Judges, whistleblowers, even activists. Anyone who threatened their flow. Cole rubbed a hand down his face. Phase 1 was money. Phase 2 is silence. Leona stared at the list. It wasn't long, maybe 50 names, but each name came with coordinates, last known sightings. Status? Neutralized, pending, engaged. Half were already marked cleared. Her hand hovered over the touchpad. Check if there's anyone in law enforcement still active. Elise clicked. A filter dropped. 8 names appeared. Leona's breath caught. Third on the list, Vega, L. Next to it, watchlisted, not primary threat. Monitor status, elevated. Elise looked up, eyes wide. You're on their radar. Leona didn't blink. So are we all. Brand shifted in the corner. Elise scrolled down. One more note below the 8 names. Cole read it aloud. Branch Tier personnel Tier Delta may be used as counter-assets. See Project Phoenix for cross-reference. Project Phoenix, Leona repeated. I saw it referenced in one of their budget sheets, Elise said. No clear description, but it's tagged to a classified shell program under Homeland Security funding. Massive budget, no oversight. Leona's eyes darkened. She stood, pacing slowly, the paper Elise had written on still tucked in her back pocket. They weren't just laundering money, they were shaping policy, silencing enemies, placing people inside agencies. And this folder, Cole said, this isn't even the full archive. No, Elise replied. This was just the cache I downloaded before I disappeared. The rest is still inside their system. Bran let out a soft grunt. They all turned. He hadn't moved from his post, but his eyes were locked on the window now, watching something, or someone. Leona stepped back to the table, closed the laptop gently. Then, quietly, this folder could burn everything. Cole didn't argue. Elise did. No, she said. This folder proves it was never just smoke. For a moment the room was still. Then Leona whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Now we know what we're up against. Bran stood. Because outside the window across the street, a black SUV had just pulled up. No markings, no headlights. And inside Cole's apartment, the war had begun. It was almost midnight when the knock came. 3 quick taps, a pause, then 2 more. Cole looked up from the laptop. Leona's hand moved toward her holster. Bran didn't bark, but he stood, ears forward, body tense. The low rumble in his chest vibrated through the wooden floor like distant thunder. That wasn't how Bran greeted family. Cole moved toward the door, glancing through the peephole. "It's Davis." Leona froze. "Isaac Davis?" Cole nodded. "FBI. Used to work with Leona. Serious Crimes Division." Bran let out a deeper growl, his stance now protective eyes locked on the door. Leona didn't move. "He's 3 states out. Why the hell would he be here?" Cole didn't answer. Because there was only one reason anyone came unannounced now. They wanted something, and chances were it wasn't justice. Leona stepped forward slowly. "Let me do the talking." She opened the door just enough to see the man standing there, mid-40s, shaved head, tailored jacket that didn't quite fit the streetlight shadows of this part of Detroit. Davis smiled like old friends do when they're not sure if they're still friends. "Leo," he said softly. "Been a long time." Leona didn't smile. "Long enough for you to call first." He looked past her shoulder. "Word travels. About a girl pulled out of a wall. About 2 cops who went dark." Bran pushed forward until his head slipped through the gap in the door. His lips peeled back just enough to show teeth, not aggression, but warning. Davis stepped back. "Easy, soldier." "He's not easy anymore," Leona said coldly. She opened the door a few inches more. "Why are you here?" He glanced around the empty street before leaning in. "You're not safe. You already know that. I saw your name on an internal bulletin marked non-compliant, blacklisted. Someone upstairs is coordinating something bigger. You're in deep, Leo. Let me help." Leona studied his eyes. They weren't lying, but they weren't clean either. Bran growled again, lower this time, tail rigid, muscles locked. Davis held up both hands. "I get it. You're running on instinct, but I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want to talk. 5 minutes." Cole appeared beside her now. His voice was calm but edged. "Talk from here." Davis looked at him, disappointed. "Really? You too, Cole?" "No offense," Cole said. "But these days, trust is earned one room away." Inside, Elise had moved toward the hallway, staying out of sight but close enough to hear. Leona narrowed her eyes. "How did you find us?" "I tracked Elise's hospital record," Davis said. "Her admittance was scrubbed from the system, but not the original intake. Someone forgot to erase the nurse's note. GPS pinged here after her release." Leona's jaw clenched. "And what exactly do you plan to do with that information?" "I came to get ahead of the leak," he said quietly. "I know about Project Phoenix, about AGDP. I'm not one of them." "But you know who is?" Cole pressed. Davis didn't answer, and that silence was louder than any siren. Bran barked once, sharp, piercing. He lunged at the doorframe, not to bite but to block. Davis flinched. "Okay," he said. "I get it. I'll go." He turned to leave, but paused on the first step. "I worked with you, Leona. Trained with you. Bled beside you in Baltimore. If I wanted you gone, I wouldn't knock." Then he disappeared into the night. Leona shut the door. Deadbolt clicked. Silence. Bran stayed near the threshold, pacing once before settling again, still alert. Cole exhaled slowly. "You believe him?" "I believe he knows more than he said," Leona replied. "And I believe he just confirmed how close they are." She turned to Elise. "Pack a bag." Elise blinked. "What?" You're going off-grid again. Tonight. Cole stepped in. We just got her stable. She won't be if they find her. But Davis didn't try anything. No, Leona said, because he didn't have to. His job was to see if we'd let him in. Next time they won't send a maybe. She walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out a laminated map paper clipped with gas station receipts and a small key with no label. Cole raised an eyebrow. Safe house? Monticello, she said. Used to be a cold site for witness extraction. Nobody left to run it now, which makes it perfect. Bran moved to her side as she spread the map across the table. Elise's voice trembled. You're not coming? I'll follow, Leona said, after we move the files, but tonight you go first, with Bran. Elise looked down at the dog, his body already inching toward the door as if he knew the route. I don't want to leave him, she whispered. Leona knelt beside Bran, stroking his collar. He'll get you there, she said, and he'll keep watch. Outside, the city exhaled steam from manholes and gutters. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed, joined by another. It wasn't raining anymore, but the flood had already started, and sometimes the people you trust most are already underwater. The flickering light from Cole's laptop screen was the only glow in the room, casting pale shadows over tired faces and a dog who refused to sleep. Bran lay flat on the floor, chin on his paws, eyes locked on the screen as if he understood what was happening, or worse, as if he'd seen it before. The file had taken 2 hours to decrypt. Even now, it resisted. Line after line of code, banking transactions layered with shell companies and alias names. But then, tucked in the corner of a document marked Logistics Reroute Directive Phase 2, a small section of metadata caught Leona's eye. RPR-7. It looked harmless. A location code, maybe? Buried deep, no address, no context, just RPR-7. Transition holding status, active rotation cycle, biweekly overseer, Tier 2 red network. Elise leaned closer from the other side of the table, fingers trembling as she traced the letters. RPR, her voice caught. Her eyes shifted, no longer reading, but remembering. I've seen that code once. A manifest. In a meeting I wasn't supposed to attend. They moved people trafficking victims from one site to another. Every site had a name. But this one, her voice grew softer. Red Pine Ranch. Cole sat up straighter. You're sure? She nodded. They tried to disguise it as a soil reclamation farm, but that ranch is in Wyoming, middle of nowhere, no cell towers for miles. If they're keeping anyone alive... She paused, swallowing. That's where? Leona stood slowly, staring at the screen. Bran didn't move, didn't blink. His breathing slowed to a near crawl, like his body understood something primal. That's where they keep them, Leona whispered. She didn't say who. She didn't have to. The silence answered for her. Cole brought up a satellite map. He zoomed in layer by layer. Detroit fading into rural grids, then out past Cheyenne, Wyoming, a scar of red dirt cutting through forest. No roads labeled, just one isolated point marked RPR-7, Private Ag Zone. No access records, no ownership listed publicly. But when Cole cross-referenced the soil survey data from Elise's encrypted folder, something clicked. Arcos Technologies owns this land, he said, through a shell corp called Vantage Red Limited. They've been listed as consultants for agricultural development. But look, he pulled up another screen. They requested biometric fencing permits. And thermal barrier insulation. For livestock, Leona's voice was low. Livestock doesn't need retinal scanners. The room grew colder. Elise wrapped her arms around herself. I was right under their nose, all those months, and I never saw how far it went. Bran suddenly rose to his feet. He walked to the screen and sat, posture alert. Leona watched him for a long beat. He knows, she murmured. He hears it before we do. Cole crossed his arms. So what now? We've got a name, a location, a company with a trail of blood behind it, and no badge left to flash. Leona didn't answer right away. Instead, she knelt beside Bran, placing her hand gently over his ribs. His heartbeat was steady, unshaken, watching, waiting. Then we go without one. Elise stared at her. You'd really go out there? Leona looked at the map again. That red scar, that quiet patch of land not meant to be visited. They buried something, she said, and we've already started digging. Cole sighed, dragging a hand down his face. We'll need prep, gear, money, and backup we can trust. Leona nodded. We burn our names from every record, go off the grid, but we go. Elise pulled a notepad from her backpack. Her hands still shook slightly, but her voice was firm. I know someone who might help. He's not law enforcement anymore. Burned too many bridges, but he knows how to disappear and how to find places like Red Pine. Leona raised an eyebrow. Name? Evan Riker, used to be a journalist, the kind who cared more about people than headlines. Cole smiled wryly. That kind doesn't survive long. Elise scribbled a number and slid it across the table. Neither do girls in walls, she said. But here I am. Bran barked once. Not loud, not urgent, but clear. A signal. Leona looked at him. He's in, she said softly. Outside, rain began to fall again, and in the middle of that quiet apartment, beneath the weight of too many truths and too few answers, they began to plan something that would either save lives or bury them next to the ones already forgotten. No one spoke as the flames consumed the IDs. The edges curled first driver's licenses, badges, health cards, even a picture from Cole's wallet he hadn't looked at in years. Every piece of plastic that had once declared who they were. Turned black, then red, then nothing. They stood in the gravel alley behind an abandoned freight office, the sky above inked with clouds, as if the city itself didn't want to witness what came next. Cole stared into the small fire burning in the metal barrel. You sure about this? Leona didn't look up. She slipped her own precinct ID and next, a photo taken 3 years ago when she still smiled without effort. This isn't a mission anymore, she said. It's a war. Bran stood beside her, ears perked, unmoving. The firelight flickered off his fur. In this light, he didn't look like a domestic dog. He looked like what he was bred to be, a soldier without need for uniform. Elise was the last to step forward. She dropped a student ID into the flames, followed by a broken employee badge from Arcos Technologies. Then, without warning, she took off the hospital bracelet from her wrist. Her fingers trembled, but her voice didn't. No more chains, she whispered. Cole threw the lid back on the barrel. Let's go dark. Back at the apartment, the preparation began. The blinds stayed closed, the lights dim. The laptop's webcam was physically covered with a sticker from a cereal box. Cole dumped out 2 duffel bags onto the floor, each filled with gear he hadn't touched since his SWAT days. 3 burner phones, prepaid and unregistered, 1 for each of us, he said, tossing them across the table. Maps printed out in case GPS is jammed. Knives, field kits, iodine, Encrypted flash drives, two-way radios, and a backup tracker I never thought I'd need again. Leona was in the kitchen, loading ammunition into 3 spare magazines. What about long range? Cole pulled back the sofa cushion and retrieved a sealed hard case. Inside, a scoped AR-15, matte, black, and clean. Legal, if you don't ask questions. Elise sat on the rug, watching. Her knees were pulled to her chest, but her eyes were open, taking in everything. You do this often? Too often, Cole muttered. Bran lay by the door, tail twitching every time a car passed on the street outside. His ears rotated like radar. Leona set a folded bundle onto the table. You kept it? Cole nodded. Didn't know why at the time. Guess now I do. She unrolled it carefully, revealing Bran's tactical harness. Faded but intact. Nylon straps, reinforced loops, and the word K9 Unit stitched in black across the back, half worn from years of use. Bran stood up. He walked over and placed one paw on the bundle, as if claiming it or remembering it. He knows, Elise said softly, that it's time. Cole smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He always knows before we do. They worked until past midnight. They changed into dark clothing, unbranded, functional. No wallets, no social media, no traceable connections. Everything digital was wiped, everything analog burned. They would leave the city with new paths, new roles, and no certainty they'd come back. As Cole zipped the last bag shut, Leona stood by the window, listening to the rain tapping against the glass. No backup, no warrants, no badge, she murmured. Cole joined her, arms crossed. But one hell of a lead. Leona turned to Elise. Are you ready for this? Elise didn't hesitate. They didn't just take months from me. They took lives, futures. If I stay quiet now, they win. Outside, thunder rolled. Bran stepped forward, harness now clipped around his chest, eyes locked on the door. Leona ran a hand down his neck. You ready, partner? He didn't bark, didn't move, but his tail lifted. And he waited like soldiers do at the door between safety and storm. They were no longer officers, no longer civilians. They were something else now, something that wouldn't stop at walls or red tape. And somewhere, hundreds of miles away, on a patch of dirt not found on any tourist map, someone was still waiting to be rescued. The scrapyard breathed like something alive, metal hissing in the wind, fences rattling like bones remembering what they once protected. It was near midnight when Leona pulled the SUV behind a rusted-out city bus stripped of everything but memory. Cole killed the engine. No lights, no sound but the wind and the occasional groan of the scrap towers. Place hasn't changed, Leona muttered. It's not supposed to, Cole replied. That's why he chose it. Bran jumped down from the back seat, paws landing without a sound. His ears flicked, his body low, alert, watching. Not for a threat, but for something subtler. A shift, a breath, a betrayal. They walked single file between rows of twisted steel cars crushed into blocks, washing machines dismembered, old playgrounds oxidized into silence. Then came the voice. 3 steps to your left, and you'll hit a tripwire. Not lethal, just loud. Leona stopped. Riker. A shadow peeled itself from the side of a dented trailer, rifle slung across the back, trench coat too thin for the weather. Evan Riker looked like a man who'd stopped trusting warmth years ago. His beard was overgrown, eyes sharp, pupils narrowed like someone who never quite came back from wherever he'd been hiding. Detective Vega, he said. Didn't expect to hear from you. We're not detectives anymore, she said flatly. Riker raised an eyebrow. Then you're finally interesting." He nodded to a nearby bench, old dented, with a patch of rainwater pooled in the middle. No one sat. No one relaxed. Cole handed him a flash drive. "Passwords embedded. You'll find folder names matching a pattern. AGDP001 through AGDP019. Offshore transfers, encrypted call logs, internal memos." Riker didn't reach for it. "And what do you want in return?" Leona pulled out a sealed envelope. Inside, a copy of the decrypted document pointing to RPR-7. She slid it across a rusted panel. "You used to cover land shell companies. Tell me who owns Red Pine Ranch." Riker sighed, took the flash drive and the envelope. He knelt by a plastic crate that had clearly been turned into a field station solar charger, burner laptop, even a tiny satellite phone with a cracked screen. Bran never looked away from him. Leona leaned against a post. "You still keeping tabs on your old friends in the Bureau?" Riker smirked. "The ones not dead or discredited? Sure." He plugged in the drive. His fingers moved fast, as if hesitating might give someone time to trace the signal. "Jesus," he whispered. "What?" Cole asked. Riker turned the laptop so they could see. It wasn't just names. It was patterns. Hundreds of transactions, multiple continents, coded tags that lined up with witness IDs from previously sealed human trafficking trials. A redacted memo with one line visible: AGDP Phase 2 to commence Q4, contingent on pilot retention ratio. He scrolled again, paused. There it is. Leona stepped closer. A scan of a purchase agreement. Red Pine Ranch, acquired under shell company Borealis West Holdings, funneled through Arcos-linked subsidiaries. Owner of record, Montero A. Cole. Cole blinked. "You're kidding." "Not even a little." Riker looked up. "And there's more." He reached into his coat, pulled out a rolled-up map paper, not digital. He unrolled it on the hood of the car, weighing down the corners with a wrench and a pocket knife. It was a satellite survey. Thermal overlays. Dated 3 weeks ago. "This is your ranch," Riker said. 12 structures. Only 5 visible from ground level. The rest are buried, shielded, or disguised. He tapped a red mark. "This one's active. 24-hour generator signature, thermal spikes during night hours." Elise stepped forward from the shadows. "That's where they keep them." Everyone froze. Leona hadn't realized she'd followed. But Elise was here, hood up, eyes steady, voice calm. Riker studied her. "You're the one they didn't finish." "I'm the one who remembered." Her voice didn't shake. "And I'm the one making sure the next ones don't end up where I was." Riker exhaled. "You'll need better maps than these." He pulled out a second folder, older, creased. Stolen from a private security contractor Arcos used 5 years ago before they got their own in-house team. Floor plans, staff rotations, even drone coverage patterns. Leona took it. "Why help us?" Riker's smile faded. "Because I watched them bury a story once, and that story had a name. Maria Calderon. My wife." Silence. Bran stepped closer to him slowly, then sat. He didn't growl, didn't bark, just watched. Riker looked down at him. "You trust the dog?" "I trust what he doesn't like," Cole said. Riker looked back at Leona. "Final warning. Once you move, they'll know. Hell, they probably already do." And then he stepped back into shadow. "Good hunting," he whispered. The dirt road leading toward Red Pine Ranch wasn't listed on any map. No GPS signal, no mile markers. Only trees, dense, dry, and windless. that swallowed the sound of their tires as the SUV coasted to a halt behind a thicket of pine. Bran was the first to move. No command, no cue, just instinct. He stepped out from the back without hesitation, muzzle lifted into the air, ears alert. His paws touched the soil like he remembered it. As if somewhere, in his bones, something told him, this is where the ghosts gather. Cole slung a field pack across his shoulder, clipped the compact rifle onto his vest. He's been like this since we passed the old power line. Leona nodded, scanning the tree line. That matches the perimeter Riker marked. Elise stayed back inside the SUV. She watched Bran through the side mirror, her fingers curled tightly around the printed satellite photos Riker had given them. The closer they got, the less her breathing resembled fear, more like memory returning too quickly to bear. Bran stopped. His nose skimmed the edge of a hollow root. Then he did something rare. He growled, low, controlled, but not at anything visible. Leona crouched beside him. "What is it, boy?" Bran didn't answer, of course, but his eyes moved upward. Cole followed his gaze, then tensed. There, a flicker, high above the treetops. No engine noise. No blinking red light. But enough moonlight caught the matte black shape hovering in the still air to confirm it. Drone, and not a hobbyist one either. Thermal, most likely, Cole muttered. Which means, they see us, Leona finished. Cole's voice was flat. They've been seeing us. Leona's jaw locked. So Riker was right. They're not defending. They're watching. Bran didn't wait. He started moving slow, low to the ground, his steps perfectly placed between pine needles and dry twigs, nose to the wind, not tracking a scent this time, testing the terrain. Cole and Leona followed close, each step chosen like a heartbeat in a minefield. Every shadow could be a sensor, every rustle in the branches a listening device. They haven't made contact, Cole said quietly. No patrols, no warning shots, just drones. They want us to get closer, Leona said, or they want to see if we'll back off. Bran paused at a fallen tree trunk and sniffed hard. Then he growled again. Tripwire? Cole asked. Leona knelt. Her gloved fingers brushed the underside of the trunk. Worse, infrared, she pointed. A set of almost invisible rods was sunk into the earth, angled toward a buried motion-triggered camera. They had stepped into a test field, a place where you didn't walk unless someone wanted you to walk there. Cole cursed under his breath. This isn't surveillance, it's conditioning. Leona turned to him. Say it. They're baiting us, he replied, or testing us. Bran circled back to them, panting, body coiled like a drawn bow. His instincts weren't just tracking now. They were responding. He looked at Elise through the trees. She didn't flinch. She opened the SUV door and walked toward them. Whatever they're doing, she said, voice steady, it means one thing. Cole raised an eyebrow. What? They're not ready yet. Or they think we're not a threat. Leona tilted her head. Why would they risk exposure like this? Elise looked at Bran. Because this is a lab, not a fortress. And every lab needs test subjects. A silence fell between them. Leona exhaled through her nose. Then we're not just trespassing. We're part of the experiment now. A sound cracked through the sky. Not thunder. Buzz click. Another drone. Closer. Louder. More aggressive in its hover. Bran's fur bristled. He didn't bark, but his tail lowered, stance tightening. Cole raised his rifle halfway. We need to move before they get eyes on the SUV's plates. No, Leona said. We need to stay invisible. She turned to Elise. Take the vehicle. Head back to the last gas station on Route 6. Use the back roads. We'll rendezvous at the west edge of Black Ridge Park in 2 hours. Elise hesitated. And if I don't see you? Bran walked over and pressed his head gently against her leg. A small, deliberate touch. She blinked, then nodded. I'll wait. The SUV turned and rolled quietly down the hidden path, tires crunching the gravel like a retreating heartbeat. Cole and Leona turned toward the ranch again. Bran moved ahead, not hunting, not tracking, but answering, to something out there that had been waiting. And above them, the drone blinked once, then faded into blackness, its signal sent, its test complete. The first time Leona Vega met director Alan Serro, she still believed in clean lines. She was 27, freshly promoted from Quantico, with a reputation for precision and disobedience in equal measure. He'd found her in the firing range at dusk, the last echo of gunfire still hanging in the air like a question no one wanted to answer. You're not supposed to be here after hours, he said, stepping in without a shadow. I'm not good at rules that only exist on paper, she replied without turning. He chuckled. You'll do well then. He became her handler, her mentor, the voice on the other end of too many encrypted calls. He once told her, loyalty is earned through consistency, but loyalty to truth, that'll get you burned. At the time, she thought he meant it as a warning. Now she understood it had always been a blueprint. Present day, a motel room 2 counties off the grid. The paint was flaking on the windowsill. Bran lay curled on the floor by the door, breathing even and steady, but not asleep. Cole handed Leona a cup of bitter gas station coffee. You're still staring. She didn't look up from the decrypted documents. His name's in every phase. Not just oversight, not just clearance. He greenlit Phoenix Protocol himself. Director Serro? She nodded slowly. The name sat on her tongue like ash. He signed off on the off-book acquisitions. He rerouted FBI field funds into Arcos's shell companies. There are secure emails tying him to the disappearance of at least 2 witnesses. Cole exhaled. Jesus. Leona pushed back from the table and stood, walking to the cracked mirror above the sink. She looked at herself, not in vanity, but as if trying to see someone else entirely. You know the worst part? She whispered. He taught me to trust my gut, trained me to follow the patterns no one else could see. And now he's the pattern, Cole said low. She turned. He didn't just betray the Bureau, he hijacked it. And I followed him through every closed door, every redacted memo, every mission that didn't feel right, but ended with a pat on the back. Bran's ear twitched. His eyes stayed on her. Cole picked up one of the printed pages. At the top, in red, AGDP, Phase 2, Embedded Enforcement Assets. His initials are on the clearance for embedded assets in law enforcement, Cole said. This doesn't just go to Arcos. This is Arcos. Leona's voice dropped. He built the gate and handed them the key. Outside, the wind shifted. A passing car backfired. Bran didn't move. He'd already learned the difference between danger and noise. Leona walked over to the drawer beside the bed and pulled out an old field notebook. From the back cover, she slipped out a worn photograph faded with time. In it, a younger version of herself stood beside Serro in front of a training facility in Quantico. He had one hand on her shoulder. Her eyes then held something they hadn't for years, belief. She tore the photo in half and tossed it in the trash. I need to tell Elise, she said. "She already knows," said Cole. "She just hasn't let herself say it yet." Later that night, when the rain began again, softer now, more like memory than weather, Leona stepped outside for air. Bran followed. No leash, no command, just presence. She looked out at the motel parking lot. Empty. Dim yellow light pouring from a faulty lamp that flickered in nervous pulses. Bran sat beside her. His eyes locked on hers. Steady. "You knew, didn't you?" she said softly. Bran didn't move. "You growled at that badge because you've seen it before, somewhere it didn't belong." She crouched next to him, hand brushing over his old tactical collar. On the inside, the stitching still read, SWAT K909 Bravo. "Every system has rot," she said, almost to herself. "But when it's the one that trained you to smell it, how do you not choke on the betrayal?" Bran didn't blink, just breathed with her, quiet, steady, waiting. Leona stood. "We bring him down," she said. Not in anger, not in vengeance, in clarity. Because that's what Sero never understood. She had believed in him, but she never stopped believing in something deeper. And now, that belief had claws. The knock came just before dawn. Not a pounding, not the desperate thud of an emergency. It was calculated. 3 calm, precise raps like someone who expected the door to open because it always had. Cole froze mid-step, coffee mug half raised. Leona's hand immediately reached for the Glock under the table. Bran had already risen from his post beside Elise's couch bed, fur bristling, teeth bared, not barking yet, but low growls vibrated from deep in his chest. Leona moved toward the peephole, slow. No sudden movements, no shadows given away. 2 men stood on the motel walkway, suits under windbreakers, sunglasses before sunrise. And in the reflection of the dusty glass, something worse, the sheen of a badge. "Federal agents," one called out. "We've come to take Elise Harper into protective custody." Elise, still groggy from the meds, blinked up at them. "I didn't call anyone." Leona didn't blink. "No one should have known where we are." Cole edged toward the back window, scanning the parking lot. A black SUV idled by the curb. Tinted. Government plates, except, "License starts with 6XQ, he said. Leona's voice was a whisper. "Federal plates never start with 6. Bran barked. Not once. Not twice. A continuous violent roar that filled the tiny room with tension so sharp it could slice bone. The taller agent knocked again. "Ma'am, we're here to help. Director Sero sent us." At that name, Leona's eyes locked with Cole's. And that was it. She moved, not toward the door, but away from it, toward Elise, pulling her up. "Go! Back exit! Now!" Cole grabbed the duffel with the burner phones and backup IDs. Bran pressed against Elise's side, her shaky legs guided by the heat of his body, the push of his presence. Outside another knock. Louder. The calm was wearing thin. Leona yanked the dresser aside, revealing the second door behind it. The fire escape exit the motel staff had long forgotten. 3 seconds, Cole hissed. They burst into the alley. Bran went first, sniffing, checking. Elise in the middle. Leona last, glancing over her shoulder just in time to hear the front door cave in. "They're in!" Gunmetal footsteps. A command barked, "Secure the girl!" Bran growled, then lunged toward a shadow moving around the side of the building. His jaws clamped down on fabric, yanking a third agent to the gravel with a strangled shout. Leona pulled Elise toward the street. Across the road, Cole spotted a landscaping truck with keys still dangling from the ignition. "This way!" They piled in Bran last, leaping into the back with one final look at the men now storming the motel room. One pointed, one shouted. The first bullet cracked through the rear window. Cole gunned the engine. The truck screeched into motion, fishtailing across wet pavement. 10 minutes later, they'd lost them. Or maybe they hadn't. No one spoke until they reached an underpass with no camera lines, no eyes, no light, except for the weak glow of sunrise creeping through the city's bones. Bran paced in the back, still restless, still watching. Elise was trembling, not from fear, from something worse recognition. "That was them," she said. "The ones who used to guard the compound." Cole looked back at her through the cracked rear view. "They were Arcos?" She nodded. "Or worse, contracted through someone Cerro trusted. He outsourced security to Silence." Leona stepped out of the truck, air cold in her lungs. She stared at her reflection in the side mirror, hair disheveled, eyes haunted, adrenaline fading. "What if we hadn't checked the plates?" she whispered. Cole joined her, voice low. "We'd be watching Elise disappear again." Bran hopped out and nudged Leona's hand with his nose. She crouched, touched his muzzle. "You saved us," she murmured. He huffed through his nostrils. The wind picked up. The city was still asleep. Leona stood again, the weight of it all pressing down like rain clouds. "They used the Bureau's seal," she said. "Our language, our uniforms, our codes." Cole's jaw clenched. "They've turned the system into a weapon." Elise stepped out of the truck, unsteady, but focused. "Then it's time we stop trying to report it." Leona turned to her. Elise's voice didn't waver. "We expose it. On our terms." Leona looked at Bran. The dog's eyes were steady, sharp, like he understood the stakes better than anyone. And maybe he did. "We disappear," she said. "Tonight." "No more calls, no more backup," Cole added. "Just us." Leona nodded once. "We burn the trail, and then we burn the truth into them." The neon buzzed faintly outside the window. Half the motel sign flickered like a dying pulse. "No VA sigh." Rain tapped against the glass in uneven rhythms, as if the night itself couldn't make up its mind whether to cry or to wait. Inside, silence stretched between them like wire ready to snap. Leona sat at the edge of the bed, her hands smeared with oil and gunmetal. Before her, a small table bore the weight of their quiet rebellion: burner phones, loose rounds, 2 encrypted flash drives, and a map of Red Pine Ranch marked in red ink that bled like an opened wound. She didn't look up when she spoke. "We're not officers anymore, not tonight." Cole stood at the sink, washing blood from a shallow cut above his eyebrow, the gift of shattered glass from the SUV's rear window. He met her eyes in the mirror. "Then what are we?" he asked, not sarcastic, just resigned. Leona reached for her holster, snapped the buckle shut with a click that sounded louder than thunder. Her voice was calm, like someone who had long since crossed a line and couldn't remember where it was drawn in the first place. "We're what the system was supposed to be." In the far corner, Elise lay bundled in a military-style wool blanket. Her skin was still pale, but her breathing had evened out, steadier now. In the low light, it was hard to tell whether she was asleep or simply too exhausted to speak. Bran was beside her. He hadn't moved in an hour. His body was still, but his eyes were wide locked on the door like he was already expecting what they hadn't yet dared to say aloud. Attack, retaliation, ambush, retake. There would be no more knocking this time. Leona crouched by her duffel bag and pulled out a black vest, faded, torn at one strap, but functional. On the back, the Velcro patch still clung stubbornly. K9 Ups, Ramsey Unit. She tossed it across the room to Cole, who caught it with one hand and stared at it for a long beat. Didn't think I'd see this again? Leona didn't smile. You still fit in it? He raised an eyebrow, slipped the vest on. Barely. But Bran'll liked the throwback. She turned to the dog, voice softer. You ready for one last mission? Bran didn't bark, just rose. Quietly, intentionally. Like a soldier called back to duty. Not for glory, but because no one else would do it. His tail stayed low, his steps silent. But his eyes never left the door. Elise stirred. You're going back there, she said, voice raw. Cole knelt beside her. We're not leaving you this time. Elise swallowed, and her gaze flicked between them, then landed on Bran. She reached out a hand, fingers trembling, and placed them gently on the dog's head. If you don't make it back... Bran leaned in. She didn't finish the sentence. No one had to. Leona approached the wall where the map hung. Red Pine Ranch was marked in an ugly circle. Scribbled beside it were notes in shorthand. Guard rotations, electric perimeter, blind spots at dawn. She stabbed a finger toward a culvert on the east side. That's where we get in. 0400. Visibility low, no drone sweeps logged at that hour. Cole strapped on a thigh holster. Once we're in? Leona's voice hardened. We split. You and Bran sweep the lower sectors. I'll take comms and get eyes on the holding cells. If Elise's intel is right, there's a basement block under the west wing. Elise pushed herself upright. It's not just a lab, she said hoarse. They keep people there, not just me. Leona didn't blink. Then we're getting all of them out. The rain picked up outside. Heavy now, a cleansing storm, or maybe an omen. Cole pulled a rifle case from under the mattress. This is going to be loud. No, Leona said. This has to be surgical, fast, precise. Cole loaded the weapon. It won't stay that way, you know that. She nodded. That's why we brought Bran. The dog stepped forward, and Leona fastened his vest adjusted for the extra years, the healed scar along his ribs, the faint silver now threading through the black on his face. You saved her, she whispered. Bran looked at Elise. For a moment, the only sound was the rain and the distant hum of a truck passing by the highway beyond. Then Leona whispered what had been buried since the moment they pulled Elise from behind that wall. And now you saved them. The motel clock blinked 2:42 a.m. They had 90 minutes to rewrite the rules, or break them completely. Outside, thunder rolled like distant artillery. Bran sat by the door again, still watching. Not for rescue, not for retreat, but for the moment, war would knock, and he'd be the first to answer. The gravel crunched under their tires as the black SUV slowed to a crawl. Dusk settled like ash over the hills, tinting the pine trees with a sickly copper hue. Fog licked the ground in tendrils, rising from the cold soil like smoke from something that should have burned long ago, but didn't. Leona cut the engine. No one moved. 2 miles out from Red Pine Ranch. They were close enough to feel it now, whatever it was. Cole adjusted the rearview mirror. Bran's reflection filled half the frame. nose pressed near the glass, ears alert. He hadn't made a sound since they left the motel, but he knew. God, he knew. Leona opened the passenger door slowly. The night air was colder than it should have been for spring, sharp, metallic, the kind of cold that didn't just live in the bones, it warned of blood. Gabrielle stepped out next. She moved carefully, clutching a weathered tube of rolled-up maps and a tablet tethered to an offline GPS unit. Her fingers were steady, but her voice wasn't when she spoke. "Old permit records were vague," she said, "but I mapped the changes since the last satellite scan. They built more than fences. They climbed a small ridge and dropped to their stomachs, peering down into the hollow where Red Pine Ranch lay hidden like a wound the world forgot to clean. And there it was, a patchwork of old barns, concrete hangars, and newer metallic structures glinting under the last light of day. The property stretched wider than expected, ringed by double-layered fencing. Along the perimeter, motion sensor pylons, thermal cameras mounted to rust-proof poles, and 3 drones making lazy arcs overhead, silent and efficient. Bran growled low. His body tensed. "What do you see, boy?" Cole asked, crouching beside him. The dog didn't look away. His nose quivered, ears rotated like satellite dishes locking in on static. Leona adjusted the binoculars. "Electric fencing," she muttered. "High voltage. Recent install." Gabrielle unrolled the map and flattened it against a metal case. She pointed to several hand-sketched zones. Her voice hushed. "They widened the compound beyond legal boundaries. This area here, North Quadrant, wasn't on any blueprint. Concrete foundations, unregistered, could be subterranean." Leona frowned. "Holding cells?" Gabrielle nodded grimly. "Or worse." Cole pulled a breath through clenched teeth. "Why build all this if you're just hiding financial fraud?" Leona didn't answer. Some truths don't echo in words, only in silence. "See that?" Gabrielle pointed to a tower, an antenna taller than anything else, painted in camo patterns to blend with pine needles and sky. At its base, a small generator hut, guarded by 2 men in tactical gray, pacing with military precision. "That's not ranch security," Leona whispered. "That's paramilitary." Bran's gaze shifted again. A second growl, shorter this time. Then he stepped backward, tail stiff, eyes locked west. Cole followed his line of sight. Movement, past the silo. A black ATV zipped along a dirt path headed toward the western structure. Spotlights flared briefly, scanning the tree line just shy of where they were hidden. "They're nervous," Leona said. "This isn't security, it's containment." Gabrielle lowered the map, her voice hollow. "How many people you think are down there?" No one answered. Instead, Leona pulled out her knife and scored a new mark into the map, a line slicing through the eastern blind spot Gabrielle had sketched earlier. "This is our entry." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Culvert?" Leona nodded. "Drainage shaft, shallow slope. If the rain keeps up, we can mask heat signatures." A drop hit her jacket, then another. Soon the sound of rain blurred the edges of the world, soft, steady, deliberate. Nature's own metronome to a plan unfolding beneath its rhythm. Cole moved to the trunk and unzipped Bran's vest, fitting it over the dog with reverence. He checked the straps, brushed the rain off the canine patch, and tapped it once. "You remember the game, partner?" Bran didn't wag his tail, but he blinked once, slow, assured. A soldier, not a pet. Gabrielle secured the tablet inside her coat and packed the maps away. We'll lose drone cover in 15. Cloud ceilings dropping. Leona watched the lights flicker across the compound below, motion sensors blinking, lives trapped in walls that didn't even exist on official maps. We move at 4 o'clock. No sooner. No sound, no room for mistakes. Cole chambered around. You expecting mistakes? Leona didn't flinch. I'm expecting ghosts. As they retreated from the ridge, Bran gave one last look toward Red Pine Ranch. Not a growl, not a bark, just a long stare, as if already memorizing what needed to be done. They vanished into the tree line, rain chasing their footsteps. The ranch remained still below, a nest of secrets pulsing beneath metal, wire, and lies. The kind of place that didn't just hide crimes, it bred them. The rain came down in cold sheets now, sharp, steady, rhythmic. It drummed on the hood of the old real estate sedan Leona had borrowed from a repo lot 15 miles out. The fake logo on the side door read Oaks and Pines Realty, a name that had never existed for a sale that never would. Leona wiped the condensation from the rearview mirror and adjusted her jacket collar. The blazer was crisp. Her boots weren't. There was mud on the soles and a pistol strapped to her ankle that didn't belong to any open house. She glanced once at her reflection, then shoved the door open. The wind knifed through her as she stepped out and slammed the door shut with just the right amount of casual confidence, enough to be forgettable. Up the hill, beyond the cover of the trees, Cole and Bran watched her move down the gravel path like she'd done this 100 times before. "Showtime," Cole muttered, kneeling beside the German shepherd. He adjusted Bran's earpiece miniature, waterproof, and connected to a low-frequency comm. "You ready, boy?" Bran's eyes locked on Leona. Then, in complete silence, he moved. They flanked east, toward the blind spot Gabrielle had marked low brush and a narrow gully where the fencing hadn't been reinforced. The rain covered their footfalls, the shadows their movement. Cole moved like smoke. Bran moved like something older, something born for this. Meanwhile, at the front gate of Red Pine Ranch, Leona approached the chain-link fence with a clipboard in one hand and her phone raised like a signal beacon. 2 guards emerged from the covered booth. Military-style vests, standard sidearms, Arcos patches barely visible under ponchos. "Ma'am," one of them called, "this is private property." Leona widened her eyes just enough to look lost, but not weak. She pushed her soaked bangs aside and forced a nervous laugh. I'm sorry. My firm said the property here might be coming up for development. We've got buyers interested in expanding a wilderness retreat. I thought I could just—" She gestured vaguely toward the empty road. "Drive up and leave a card?" The guard squinted. "This isn't listed for sale." "Right. I figured," she replied, offering a practiced, harmless smile. "But someone put in a request about this parcel. GPS brought me here." She fumbled for her phone, screen flickering in the rain, and deliberately dropped it. "Oh, come on," she muttered, crouching down. One of the guards instinctively took a step forward. The other watched her hands closely. "Look," she said, standing. "If this is a bad time, I'll go. I just didn't want to miss a potential showing window." Inside the compound, as the guards argued over protocol, Bran reached the culvert entrance near the eastern perimeter. The fence buzzed above high voltage, but grounded at the base. The mud around the edge was loose, freshly disturbed. Cole knelt, scanning the area with a thermal lens. Nothing. Too quiet. He tapped twice on Bran's vest. "Go." Bran slipped through the crawl space, wet fur, steady breath, paws silent against gravel. Inside, the understructure opened into a service corridor, unused and thick with mold. Crates lined the edges, wires drooped from exposed beams. The scent was strong here, metal, blood, old antiseptic, and something else. Fear. Bran froze at a junction. His ears twitched. Footsteps. 2 guards passed above, speaking in low tones. Their words were muffled by rain and steel, but their voices held no boredom. They were watching, waiting. Bran moved on toward the scent that made his fur rise, one he hadn't smelled since the wall. Elise. At the front gate, the guards were now asking Leona for ID. "Oh, sure," she said, fishing into her soaked bag. Her fingers brushed the edge of the fake card Gabrielle printed. She held it out. The guard frowned. "This name doesn't match the inquiry we got last week." "Wait, someone else was here?" They looked at each other, slipped. Leona caught it. "Well, that explains the confusion. I'll make sure the office doesn't double up." She started backing away, still calm, still polite. Inside the fence, Cole reached the far wall and peeked through a ventilation slit. Bran's signal was still strong. The dog had entered the second corridor, approaching a steel door with an emergency panel beside it. Red light, locked. Bran didn't stop. He sniffed the seam, sat, waited. A signal. "We've got something," Cole whispered into the mic. Leona's voice cracked through comms. "Keep your distance. They're on edge. Something's off." Back in the structure, Bran crouched low, then stilled. From inside the door, a whimper. Faint, but real. Bran pressed his body close, muzzle against the metal. His eyes never moved from the door. Cole's breath caught in his throat. He found her. Outside, the guard tilted his head, listening to something in his earpiece. "We need you to leave. Now." Leona raised her hands in mock surrender. "Hey, no problem. Just a misunderstanding." She turned, walked, slow, casual, every muscle in her spine coiled like a fuse. Rain masked her smile. Because behind that door, hope had whimpered, and Bran had answered. Bran froze. His entire body muscle, instinct, memory, went still in the narrow corridor beneath the east wing of Red Pine Ranch. The cold of the concrete seeped through the pads of his paws, but his breath didn't hitch, his heart didn't race. Only his ears twitched. Then there it was again, a sound so faint it could have been the wind. But Bran knew better. A single, fragile, whimper trembling, soft, raw escaped from behind the steel door just ahead. It wasn't a call for help. It was the sound something made when it didn't believe help would ever come again. Bran stepped forward. He pressed his body to the bottom of the door, tail lowered, nose twitching. The scent was faint salt, infection, chemical burn, but unmistakable. His head tilted slightly. Elise. She was alive. Above ground in the storm-drenched parking area of the ranch, Leona adjusted her comms earpiece as she walked back toward the brush line, speaking low. "Bran's got something. Tell Cole to hold until I—" The comm line clicked once, then silence. "Cole?" she whispered. "Say again?" Nothing. She tapped the receiver again. Static. The entire line had gone dead. Across the compound, the world shifted. With no warning, every light flood lamps, hallway bulbs, security strobes blinked once, then dropped into total darkness. For 2 seconds, the silence was deafening. And then, alarms. Not shrill sirens, not panic blares, no, just a subtle, high-frequency pulsing one you felt more than heard. The kind that whispered, "We see you. We've been watching." From his hidden vantage near the generator shed, Cole's jaw clenched. "Leona, do you copy?" he whispered into his collar. No reply. He turned toward Bran's signal beacon on the tracker. Still strong, still inside. Rain soaked through his gear. Wind whipped across the tree line. The whole compound had gone into silent lockdown. Inside the tunnel, the air pressure shifted. Bran's ears flicked. The soft hum of a sealed ventilation system kicked in overhead. Behind the door, the whimper had stopped, but he could hear something else now. Shallow breathing, scraping metal. A chain being pulled gently, as if by someone who had tried too many times before. Bran barked once, sharp, intentional, not loud but certain. A pulse. On the other side of the door something stirred, and then a whisper. "Bran?" The voice was shredded at the edges, dry, almost disbelieving, but alive. It wasn't the voice of someone screaming for help. It was the voice of someone whose mind had begun to let go, until a familiar sound yanked them back into a body that still ached, back into a moment that dared to believe someone came. Bran scratched the door once, then twice. Inside, Elise shifted her weight, dragging herself forward despite the chain around her ankle. The dark room reeked of bleach, blood, and abandonment. But the bark had teeth. It bit through the fog like fire. She coughed once, then whispered again, "I knew you'd find me." Outside, Leona pressed a hand against her earpiece. "Damn it, come on!" She reached the tree line, but Cole was no longer in view, only shadow and trees. A drone whirred overhead closer now. Infrared scans had likely spotted her before the lights went out. Whoever was running this place, they were already adapting. Leona gritted her teeth and drew her weapon. "We're exposed. Someone knew we were coming," she muttered, more to herself than anyone. She ducked behind a rusted-out utility truck and surveyed the distance between her and the side access door where Bran's signal still pulsed. Then footsteps, too fast, too erratic, too light to be patrols. She turned, weapon raised. Cole. He emerged from the dark, soaked to the bone, rifle slung low. The compound's wired to collapse into lockdown mode. Thermal's useless, but Bran found her. He's not moving from that door. Leona didn't hesitate. Then that's where we go. Inside, Bran lay down against the metal slab and began to whine softly. Not out of fear, but urgency. Every sound he made was meant to keep Elise conscious, present, anchored, because beyond that door she had no clock, no light, no voice that had spoken to her like a human being in weeks. All she had was this moment, and the dog on the other side of the wall. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. Bran stood, his teeth bared. Another door, farther down, creaked open. Flashlight beams pierced the dark. "Is someone in here?" a voice called out. Bran didn't move. He growled low. Elise curled back against the wall, silent, tears running down a dirt-streaked face. The chain rattled as she shifted. Then she pressed her hand flat against the cold wall. "One more time," she whispered. "Bran, I'm still here." Outside, Leona and Cole reached the tunnel's side entry. The power was out, but there were still 20 guards between them and the door Bran guarded. Leona stared into the storm. "Let's raise hell." The lights in the chamber never turned off. Not really. They dimmed, yes, slipping into that sterile, moon-gray hue that made night feel like a trick of the eye. But true darkness never came here. That would have been too humane. Darkness meant sleep. And in this place, sleep had to be earned. Elise lay on a gurney bolted to the floor, her wrists limp, her pupils slightly dilated under heavy eyelids. IV lines threaded through the crook of her arm like vines without roots. Machines clicked rhythmically, measuring breath, heart rate, sedation levels. The air smelled of rubbing alcohol, rusted vents, and something synthetic like lemon cleaner hiding rot. Above her, a doctor in a white coat adjusted the dosage. He didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, didn't ask her name, because in this place, her name didn't matter. He tapped the IV bag. It hissed, releasing a soft cloud into the tube. The sedative worked slowly enough to keep her body pliant, enough to make her forget what day it was, but never enough to kill the dreams. And the dreams, they kept coming. Some were fragments of childhood, laughter, bike spokes spinning under sun. But some were Bran, always Bran. She didn't remember how she knew it was him. There was no barking, no voice saying his name. Just eyes, eyes like earth after rain. Eyes that didn't ask if she was okay, they knew she wasn't, and stayed anyway. In her dream, those eyes waited by a door. In her dream, they never left her. And somewhere, beneath layers of medication and bruised memory, Elise clung to that image like a lifeline. Bran didn't forget, so neither would she. Behind a wall of reinforced glass, high above the chamber floor, Montero sat in silence. His office was dark, lit only by the glow of multiple surveillance feeds. Each screen showed a different corridor entryways, side tunnels, generators. A few showed the perimeter. Others zoomed in on rooms like this one, cells that didn't look like cells, gurneys that didn't need chains anymore because the chemicals did the job. And then there was her room, feed 17. Subject, Elise Navarro. He tapped the screen once. She stirred slightly, nothing dramatic, just the shift of a finger, a twitch in her cheek, a signal that something inside her was still alive, still resisting the fog. Montero narrowed his eyes. "She's burning through more than expected," he murmured. A voice crackled through his comms. "Compound powers stabilized, sir. Perimeter breach confirmed. East tunnel. Unidentified K9 and one male. Possibly ex-SWAT." He didn't blink. "And the woman?" "Not on thermal yet, but we're tracking her comms last pinged near the access lot." Montero leaned back, temple pulsing. "Let them in." A pause. "Sir?" "Let them believe they're getting close." He stared at Elise's screen. "I want her conscious when they find her. I want her to remember walking into this, that her escape wasn't real, that this was always where she ends." Down below, the doctor adjusted one more dial. He hesitated. Something in Elise's chart flickered a spike in neural activity. He leaned closer. Her eyes twitched under the lids. And then, she whispered, barely audible, "Don't let them win." The doctor stepped back. He looked toward the camera in the corner, waited. No response. He didn't speak to her, didn't record a note. He just turned off the IV pump and walked out. Far beneath the surface of Red Pine Ranch, Bran pressed his weight against a closed steel door, every muscle in his body taut, every breath controlled. He didn't bark, didn't move, just waited, because something told him she was right there. And for a dog trained to sniff through rubble, blood, deception, this was instinct, not training. She was on the other side, and if he had to rip the earth open to get to her, he would. In the surveillance room, Montero watched the camera feed glitch once, just for a split second. Brand's eyes, glowing faintly in the low light, stared directly into the lens. The man stiffened. It wasn't possible. The dog shouldn't know where to look. And yet, for one haunting breath, it looked as if Brand had seen him, straight through the wall, through the camera, into the truth. Montero's jaw tightened. He turned off the feed, then muttered under his breath, "Let's see how far your loyalty gets you." The rain had slowed to a whisper by the time Leona and Cole scaled the south-facing wall. The world around them pulsed with shadow trees slick with water, the ground a quiet grave of footprints already half erased. Brand moved just ahead, his ears flat, his gait low. Every muscle in the trio's bodies was wound like wire. The east gate was open, not wide, but enough to feel wrong. Leona's hand hovered over her weapon. "That gate wasn't open on the satellite scans," she whispered. Cole's jaw tightened. "Maybe they're sloppy. Or maybe they're expecting us." Brand halted. He didn't growl, didn't bark. He just froze. Every inch of him stiffened, as if his instincts had tripped a wire no one else could see. His nose lifted into the air, testing something only he could smell. And then, the sound. So faint, it could have been wind shifting through a broken beam. But it wasn't. It was boots. Too many. Too synchronized. Too close. "Back!" Leona hissed. Too late. Floodlights exploded to life around them, white-hot beams slicing through the trees like a blade. Brand barked sharply, stepping in front of them as shapes emerged from every direction. Rifles up, vests marked with false agency logos, the kind of uniforms that could pass a casual glance but not real scrutiny. Cole raised his hand slowly, stepping just ahead of Leona. "Federal agents," he barked. "You're out of jurisdiction and out of uniform. Identify yourselves." Silence. Then footsteps, not rushed, not panicked, just deliberate, measured. And from the shadows stepped a man neither of them had met, but both knew by name. Montero. His black coat clung to his frame like smoke. His gloves impeccably clean. A scar ran across his chin, barely visible in the harsh light, like a signature on a contract signed in blood. He smiled. "So glad you made it." Leona's eyes narrowed. "Where is she?" Montero tilted his head. "Elise, she's safe, for now." He motioned to one of the guards. They stepped forward and yanked Cole's radio from his belt, crushing it underfoot. "No backup," Montero added. "No cavalry, just you, and the ghost of a case no one wants opened." Brand let out a low growl, inching closer to Montero. Another guard stepped in with a shock baton. Leona held up a hand. "Touch him and I'll burn this place down myself." Montero didn't flinch. "You don't understand the game you've walked into, Agent Vega." Leona's voice was ice. "You're not an agent anymore." A quiet chuckle escaped Montero's lips. "Neither are you." Silence swallowed the compound for a moment. Raindrops pattered off metal and gravel. Brand stood unmoving, tail stiff, eyes locked on Montero, like he was memorizing every breath. Leona glanced sideways at Cole. One look exchanged between them. Plan B. There was always a Plan B. 30 feet away, hidden behind a crumbled drainage hatch, a backup signal blinked. 3 pulses, then black. Back in the clearing, Montero took a few slow steps forward. He addressed Brand directly. "You should have stayed retired, Mutt. Some dogs don't know when the leash was for their protection." Bran growled a deep, guttural sound that came from somewhere ancient inside him. Cole's hand hovered near his hip, but no gun. Not yet. "You want her dead?" Leona spat. "Because that's what happens when you keep tightening the noose. She talks, and it all burns." Montero smiled, sharp as a scalpel. "She won't talk. Not after tonight." Then he raised a hand. The guards closed in, but Bran moved first. A blur of black and muscle, he launched toward the closest rifleman, teeth flashing, snarling. Screams cut through the rain. A gun discharged, hitting air. Chaos rippled through the tight formation. Leona ducked behind a pillar of stacked crates, pulling Cole with her. "Go loud," she hissed. He nodded. "Go loud." Smoke bombs, flashbang, all part of Plan B, buried in Bran's pack. She yanked the first one. Pop, flash, screams. Cole tackled a guard to the dirt, ripped the comm from his ear, and tossed it. Bran leapt again, this time onto a crate, barking like fury itself. Then a voice pierced the madness. "Find the girl!" Montero's voice, and it was panicked now. He'd lost control. Leona pushed forward, eyes blazing, every step toward the truth that nearly cost her badge, her name, her sanity. And somewhere inside this fortress, Elise was waiting. And if Bran's instincts were right, she was waking up. The compound erupted. Screams collided with sirens. Smoke curled like wounded ghosts through the broken air. Flashbangs echoed off steel and concrete. Lights flickered. Somewhere, a generator whined, sputtered, then died. And in that sudden, pitch-black stillness, Bran moved. Not like a dog, like judgment. He lunged from the crate, jaws locking onto the thigh of a guard reaching for Leona. The man screamed, his weapon clattering uselessly to the floor as Bran tore him down, fur slick with rain, eyes burning with purpose. Cole shouted through the chaos, "Bran, to the left cover!" But Bran didn't obey. Not this time. He was chasing something else, something deeper, a scent, a memory, a heartbeat he hadn't forgotten. Far beneath the shattered calm, in a dim-lit medical room that reeked of chemicals and control, a girl stirred. Elise. Eyes half-lidded, arms heavy, head like stone. She blinked once, then again, and through the fog a sound reached her. Not voice, not footsteps. A bark, familiar, fierce. Her eyes widened just enough. The machines buzzed around her. IV lines dripped. A heart monitor beeped in slow, disjointed rhythm. Her wrist was cuffed, ankles too. The doctor had stepped out moments ago. But that bark, it wasn't a dream. She knew that bark. Her lips parted, breath shaky. Her fingers twitched. She bit through the IV line. The taste of saline filled her mouth. She didn't care. She forced her arm up, trembling, muscles barely responding, gripping the side rail, inching upward. Her hand slid toward the restraint. The plastic lock was cheap. She remembered that. Remembered the sound it made. Her right wrist came free. She bit the inside of her cheek hard enough to bleed to stay conscious. Left hand, then feet. The floor was cold. Her knees buckled as she touched it, but she didn't fall. Not now. Not after all this. She moved to the corner, behind mop buckets and biohazard signs, where a cracked panel waited her hiding place. She clawed it open, crawled inside, and shut out the world. Leona and Cole moved as one, bullets tearing through the hallway behind them. But Bran wasn't with them. Leona froze. "He's not here." Cole fired. "You think he found her?" "I think he never stopped looking." In the dark crawlspace, Elise pressed against the wall, breath ragged. Thud. Another thud. Crash. The panel burst open. Bran, muddy, bleeding, breathing like thunder. He stepped in, checked she was real, then sat beside her and whimpered. Above, through smoke, Leona heard it, a bark. South tunnel. "That's him," she said. "How the hell are we going to get there?" "We don't," she whispered. "He does." Somewhere in the ruin, hope still breathed four-legged, soaked and unbroken. The alarm had stopped screaming. Silence at Red Pine meant one thing: a countdown. Elise crept barefoot through dark corridors, bruised and trembling. The hospital gown clung like a ghost. The only sound guiding her, a bark, faint but distinct. Bran. Each step was agony, each breath a battle. But that sound, it was a thread. She whispered into the dark, "Keep barking. I'm coming." She limped past bodies, past rooms that smelled of bleach and blood. The power wasn't fully out. Backup generators hummed, and soon the lights would return, and with them, the hunt. A metal door. Storage wing 3B. Slightly ajar. Inside, the smell of rain-soaked fur, oil, blood. "Bran!" He limped from the shadows, muzzle stained, eyes sharp. A low whimper escaped him. She fell to her knees as he pressed his head to her chest. She barricaded the door with crates and a metal pole. Not perfect, but minutes gained were lives saved. Bran collapsed beside her, still guarding, blood seeping from his ribs. "No, no, don't you quit on me now," Elise whispered, pressing cloth to the wound. His eyes blinked once. Still here. Outside, voices, footsteps. Not rescue. Not yet. Hope wasn't loud. It lay bleeding beside her, refusing to back down. Across the city, rain blurred everything. In a dark radio tower, Evan Riker watched stolen Arcos drone footage, gunfire, dogs, shadows, and Elise dragging herself down a hall. He hit send. DCI headquarters, 11:42 p.m. Marisol Hayes read the encrypted message. "Operation Crosscut compromised. Eyes at Red Pine. No authorization sought. No delay. Shadow Echo Team, hard extract. Red Pine Ranch. Full deniability. 1 civilian. 2 off-grid officers. 1 K9. Hostiles. Unknown. We move in 45. Bring silence. And shovels." Back at Red Pine, Elise and Bran waited. The air changed, the kind of stillness before something breaks. A click at the door. A voice. "Elise Kavanaugh, Leona Vega sent us. You're safe." "Prove it." "M1911A1. Caracas, penlight pocket knife, ring a bell?" The door opened. 2 figures in black slipped in. One treated Bran, the other offered Elise a hand. "Hayes," the woman said, "let's get you out." Elsewhere, Leona bled against rubble. Cole fought a jammed gate, then headlights. Unmarked vehicles ghosted in. Operatives moved with precision, and at their front, Hayes. "Leona," she called, "you brought a team?" "I brought a shovel." The shadows fought back. Montero watched cameras blink to static. Elise was gone. "Seal the sublevels. Burn the drives," he ordered. But then, the gate exploded inward. SUVs stormed through, smoke grenades blinded the guards. Operatives ended the fight before it began. Leona ran through smoke, past scorched halls, until she found him. Bran, bloodied but standing. And Elise, dazed but alive. "You came back," Elise whispered. "We don't leave people behind," Leona said. Hayes's voice crackled. 5 minutes. Load up or get buried." Bran moved limping, but forward. Leona followed, a promise in her breath. "We're not done." Montero reached for a detonator, his last move. But a shadow from the smoke struck first, and Montero fell. The room was small, no windows, no mirrors. Just 4 walls, and the weight of everything that had happened. Elise sat wrapped in blankets, her voice steady despite the bruises and months of silence. "My name is Elise Kavanaugh. I was a junior data specialist at Arcos Corporation. I found irregular payments, flagged them. Then files vanished. My door was left open one night. Nothing taken. Just a cold glass of water on the table." She tried going to the press. No one listened. The Bureau did. "I met with Director Cerro. He said it was counter-intel. Had me sign another NDA. That night I was black-bagged. Woke up under Red Pine Ranch. They drugged me. Hurt me. Asked questions I didn't understand." Hayes listened, then ordered, "Run the drive." Technicians cracked Montero's servers. The data was damning payment trails, restraint orders, surveillance files, and Cerro's signature, his name tied to Elise's disappearance. Hayes showed Elise the printout. "That's the account I flagged," she said, voice trembling. Hayes gave the order. "Get Cerro's travel logs, his last 30 comms, under my directive." Outside, Cole sat with Bran bandaged but alert. Leona handed him coffee. "You believe it?" he asked. "I believed in him once," she replied. "That's worse." Hours later, the nation watched in stunned silence. The whistleblower footage revealed everything. Guards dragging bodies, forced injections, lists of names tagged expendable. Cerro's face appeared, recorded saying, "This isn't black market, it's black design." At DCI headquarters, Hayes declared, "Project Phoenix is real, and it ends today." Social media erupted. #Phoenix Files shut down. Arcos. Within hours, Arcos stock collapsed. Contracts froze. Cerro's jet was grounded. At the safe house, Elise stroked Bran's ear. "He got me out," she whispered. "He got us all out," Cole said. Leona stared at the screen, replaying the press conference. "You ever wonder how many more ranches are out there?" They both knew the answer. Too many. In a private chat room, a message blinked. "Golden Eagle has fallen. The nest is deeper than you think." Later, in the courtyard, Bran sat beside Cole, his chest wrapped in a soft bandage. Elise approached, no longer a prisoner, just herself again. She knelt, holding a collar etched with, "You saved me, when the system wouldn't." Bran leaned into her shoulder. No words were needed. That night, a file updated Bran's status. Service Canine, retired permanent guardian. Approved by Hayes Vega Martin. At Cole's apartment, Bran slept on the rug, the new tag tapping the floor softly. Outside, snow fell. Elise sketched him, protector, sentinel. Cole asked, "Do you think he ever forgets?" Leona watched Bran dream. "He doesn't forget. He just forgives." And in the quiet of a city that didn't know how close it came to losing its soul, a dog dreamed on. The new building was nothing like the precinct. No flickering lights, no peeling linoleum floors, no coffee-stained chairs beneath posters that lied about justice. This place was steel and glass-clean lines reinforced transparency. A fortress of intention, not intimidation. But that's not what made it different. What made it different was the silence in the briefing room. The kind of silence that follows after you've told the truth, and people actually listen. Cole stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching sunlight glint off a nameplate newly affixed to the wall. Unit 47, Federal Task Force on Internal Corruption. Investigation. Founding Officers: Captain Leona Vega, Datrin Cole Martin, Civilian Analyst. Elise R. Vaughn, Honorary Member, Bran. K.I. Return. He exhaled, long, slow, disbelieving. "I never thought I'd see this day," Leona said from behind him, voice low but clear. She wasn't wearing her old badge. She wore something new now. Something not tied to the FBI, not shackled to silence. A plain, dark suit, marked only by the Unit 47 insignia, a silver phoenix, wings spread over a cracked shield. Elise stepped in moments later, holding a sealed tablet containing the first round of investigative briefs. Her scars had faded into memory, but her eyes had not lost their edge. "We're cleared for open inquiry into Phase 2 of Arcos," she said. "Names, accounts, reassignments, some of them, they never stopped operating." She placed the tablet on the table, then turned to Bran lying beneath a desk, muzzle resting on his paw. "You're on the founding board, you know," she said softly, smiling. "Even if you never attend a meeting." Bran gave a quiet huff. Tail thumped once against the floor. A knock broke the stillness. The door opened. Marisol Hayes entered with her usual calm urgency. She handed Leona a single folder. "Washington approved your structure. Full immunity under classified designation. But there's something else." Leona flipped it open. Inside, a short letter, hand-signed by the deputy director. "You're not just a task force. You're the beginning of a federal blueprint." Cole read over her shoulder, silent. Elise read between the lines. The government had failed in the shadows, but this unit would walk in the light. Later that evening, the team stood before a small press gathering. No journalists, no headlines. Just a room of survivors, whistleblowers, and ex-officers who had paid for asking questions. Leona stepped to the podium. No speech. Just this: "We weren't created because the system worked. We were created because it didn't, and we are the answer to that failure." Applause rippled through the room, not loud, but long, like a wave returning after years of stillness. Back in the office, Bran sat upright as the others returned. On his collar hung 2 tags, now one from Elise, and a new one, engraved by Leona. "Founding Watchdog, Unit 47. He padded toward Cole and nudged his hand. Cole knelt, scratched behind his ear. "They think we're ready," he said. "You think we are?" Bran didn't move, just turned, walked to the center of the room, and sat eyes locked on the door. Waiting, watching, exactly where a guardian belongs. The auditorium was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that came from emptiness, but from something deeper. The quiet of breath held, of truths waiting to land. Elise stood behind a wooden lectern, hands gripping the sides. She wasn't wearing makeup. No light softened the faint line beneath her jaw, the one left by the collar that held her for 37 days underground. There were no teleprompters, no cue cards, just her, and the weight of every woman who never made it out. Behind her was a banner for the National Assembly on Human Trafficking Prevention, but Elise had insisted the title be smaller than the faces printed beneath it. Dozens of them. Blurred, anonymous, forgotten. Until now. She took a breath, then spoke. "My name is Elise Vaughn. I was a systems analyst at Arcos Corporation. I found something. I said something. Then I vanished. Not a sound in the room. Not even a throat cleared. I wasn't in another country. I wasn't locked in a basement overseas. I was in your city, your county. I was chained behind a wall a half-mile from the nearest precinct. She let the silence settle again, and when she looked up, her voice caught. The only reason I'm alive is a dog who refused to stop barking at a wall. A few gasps broke out, the kind that came not from shock, but shame. Elise smiled, just faintly, as if the memory brought her both peace and devastation. The lights above shimmered against the silver pin on her lapel, a small German shepherd silhouette sitting proud. He didn't ask questions. He didn't check a file. He didn't need permission. He just knew something was wrong. Elise placed a photo beside the microphone. It was grainy, taken on the day of the rescue. Bran, eyes focused, muzzle bloodied, standing over her limp form. Leona kneeling at his side. Some heroes wear suits, some wear uniforms, but the one who saved me, he wore scars and a vest labeled K9, and he barked until someone listened. When she stepped down from the podium, hands reached out, not for autographs, not for photos, but to say thank you. Survivors, law students, retired officers. They didn't quote her speech. They simply asked, "How do we help?" And for the first time in years, Elise didn't flinch when touched. She didn't scan for exits. She stood there, fully present, fully heard. Later, as the conference ended, a teenage girl approached her, no older than 16. She clutched a folded sheet of notebook paper. "I wrote a poem," she said shyly. "It's about a dog. I think it's about your dog." Elise unfolded the paper. The girl's handwriting was crooked but deliberate. It read, "He didn't speak, but he heard me still. Behind the wall, behind the will, he dug through stone, through fear and night, a whisper wrapped in fur and fight." Elise knelt and hugged her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. That evening, Elise stood outside the Capitol steps, wind brushing her hair back. Cole waited nearby with Leona. Bran lay at their feet, a blanket over his hind legs. His injuries had healed, but age had begun to speak in the way he rose slowly now, eyes more watchful than reactive. Elise knelt beside him and whispered, "They heard me today, but only because you didn't let them bury me quiet." Bran looked up, one tail wag, gentle, certain, as if to say, "It was never just your voice, it was always ours." The sun was low, dragging long gold fingers across the porch floorboards of the safe house just outside Lexington Ridge. It was the kind of light that made shadows look soft, made wounds feel like old stories instead of open cuts. Leona Vega sat on the top step of the porch. Her elbows rested on her knees. One hand clutched a chipped ceramic mug, steam barely rising into the cooling evening air. Her other hand absently traced the fur on Bran's back. He was lying beside her, his breathing slow, steady. One paw stretched forward, the other tucked beneath his chest like he was still guarding something, just not in a hurry anymore. They weren't running tonight. They weren't chasing either. For the first time in months, maybe years, no one was listening in. No badge pressed cold against her ribs, no gun within arm's reach. The radio, still half charged in her duffel, was off. Behind them, the house was quiet. Cole was inside, reading. Elise had fallen asleep on the couch. A notepad slipped from her hand, her latest talk in progress. Somewhere on page 3 she had written, "Some wounds we heal, some we carry, and some we transform into warnings for others." Bran shifted slightly. A soft groan rose from his chest, not of pain, but of the weight of rest finally allowed. Leona looked down at him and smiled, tired but real. "We're off duty, soldier," she whispered. Bran didn't lift his head, but his tail thumped the porch once. Once was enough. Out in the yard, the wind began to change. It carried the scent of pine and rain clean, not heavy, healing, not hiding, the kind of scent Bran would have once scanned for danger. Now, he let it pass. Leona took a slow sip from the mug. Cold now, she didn't mind. She closed her eyes and leaned back on her palms. The wood beneath her was worn smooth, not from years of weather, but from nights like this. Nights when peace didn't shout its arrival, but settled in like an old friend. Nights when justice didn't wear a uniform. Just a name, a memory, a collar. She reached over and tapped the silver tag on Bran's chest, the one Elise had given him after the ceremony. "You saved me when the system wouldn't." And beside it, one more tag, unofficial, unissued but earned in every way. K9 Unit 47, founding member, Bran. The only dog with clearance who never asked for it, who never needed it. Inside the house, Cole's voice floated through the open window, low, warm, reading something out loud to no one in particular. "Sometimes the badge doesn't protect. Sometimes the leash doesn't hold. But sometimes, if you're lucky, the bark cuts through the silence." Leona looked down again. Bran's eyes were closed now, not heavy, not final, just at rest. She whispered one more time, even softer, "You did good, partner." A bird sang once in the trees beyond the fence. The wind answered back. And the house behind them, still full of stories, of burn scars, of survivors, breathed in harmony. The world wasn't fixed. But tonight, they didn't need it to be. Tonight, the ones who were supposed to disappear were still here. And the dog who was never supposed to matter was home. In a world often clouded by silence, corruption, and betrayal, sometimes the clearest voice comes from those who cannot speak. This story is not just about danger or darkness. It's about loyalty that refuses to waver, about courage that doesn't need applause, and about a German shepherd named Bran, who reminded us all that one bark, one presence, can change the course of everything. German shepherds are more than service animals. They are partners, protectors, and sometimes the last line between hope and surrender. Through Bran's unwavering instincts and quiet bravery, we see the best of what dogs offer us: unconditional trust, silent strength, and love that doesn't ask for anything in return. This story leaves us with a powerful truth. Systems may fail, but hearts led by compassion never will. The values we fight for, justice, dignity, and human life, are often upheld not just by laws, but by those who stand up when it matters most, even if they walk on four legs. Let this be a tribute to every dog who has ever stood guard at our side, seen or unseen. And may we never forget, sometimes the hero doesn't wear a cape, but a collar.